Hey everyone, welcome to our review of photosynthesis. I want to start by talking about where photosynthesis happens. We know that photosynthesis takes place in plant cells, specifically in their chloroplast. If you look down here in the bottom corner, you're going to see the chloroplast, and that chloroplast is made of several different parts. There's an outer membrane, an inner membrane space, an inner membrane, and then within that inner membrane is this gel-like fluid area called the stroma. One of our reactions of photosynthesis is going to take place out here in the stroma. But another important part here are these little green stacks that contain the chlorophyll, those pigments that allow photosynthesis to happen. Those stacks are called thylakoid. Each little pancake-shaped part is called a thylakoid, and they stack together in what we call a granum. Now, those granum are connected to each other by lamella, which allows materials to move back and forth throughout the chloroplast. So that's the basic structure where we're talking about within our plant cell is the chloroplast, and it's a complex organelle where photosynthesis takes place. So what is photosynthesis? Well, the equation for photosynthesis is CO2, or carbon dioxide, plus H2O, water, and light energy react to form C6H12O6, which is glucose sugar, and O2, which is oxygen. So that's the overall equation, but let's break that down a little bit more. Like I said, that takes place in the chloroplast. So let's zoom in on our chloroplast here. This is a chloroplast over here, and so is this. In this chloroplast, you can see that there are actually two reactions of photosynthesis. One part is called the light reactions, and another part is called the Calvin cycle. The one that we talk about first is the light reactions because those have to happen during the daytime. So you get the idea, light, that's when the light comes into the plant. So light hits your leaves of your plant where there are a lot of chloroplasts, and they go to the thylakoid. What's also coming to the thylakoid is water, and water is coming to the thylakoid through the roots of the plant, bring the water in, and then the stem carries it up, and the leaves have the water in them. So light and water enter the thylakoid, and that's where the chlorophyll and other pigments that allow photosynthesis to happen exist. So light and water come to the thylakoid, they react, and from that reaction is a very fortunate byproduct, which is oxygen. Oxygen gets released into the air, and then, of course, we breathe oxygen in later. We'll talk about that when we talk about cellular respiration. But the other important product from the light reactions is this. You see here, there are some energy molecules being made. ATP and NADPH are both made from the energy produced in the reactions of the thylakoid in the light reactions. They're produced basically from light energy and water reacting. So once you have ATP and NADPH, you can use those energy molecules to fuel the Calvin cycle. And the Calvin cycle can happen in the light or in the dark. We call it light independent or dark reactions because it can happen in the dark. But this is called the cycle because there are a series of different reactions that happen. And the reactant that comes in is carbon dioxide, which the plants take in through their leaves. And they go through a series of different reactions where ultimately that carbon from the carbon dioxide becomes the carbon in our C6H12O6, which is glucose. But those reactions can only happen because of the energy molecules that were made during the light reactions in the thylakoid. So that's kind of a big picture, kind of detailed look at photosynthesis. But basically, overall, what goes in is light energy and water first go into the thylakoid where the light reactions take place to produce oxygen and energy molecules. In the Calvin cycle, carbon dioxide enters through the leaves and it undergoes a reaction where it uses these energy molecules to continue reacting and produce sugar, which can be stored for use later by the plant or could be eaten by you, and you consume that sugar, and then you can do your cellular respiration using that sugar. But overall, reactants are carbon dioxide, water, and some people say light energy as a reactant. Overall products are going to be glucose and oxygen. So you can tell from what you see here that plants doing photosynthesis is very, very important to other life on Earth because the photosynthesis process is taking in the carbon dioxide that's produced by animals and it's producing the oxygen that we breathe and the glucose that we need to eat. Now, how do we know so much about photosynthesis? Well, there are four scientists, main scientists, who help us understand this a little bit better. The first of those that I want to talk about is Van Helmont. Van Helmont let us know that and other plants take in water. He worked with willow trees, and he set up a willow tree in a pot at home, and the only thing he added was water, and he noticed that after a long period of time, the soil didn't go away and the pot didn't go away. The only thing that the tree was consuming in order to grow was the water. So we knew that water goes into plants, which you can see over here in our photosynthesis reaction. We also have Priestley, and he did an experiment with a bell jar, a big jar that he put a plant under. And he found out that if you put that bell jar over a candle, the candle burns out, kind of like if you put the lid on one of those candles that comes in a jar, the flame goes out. But the flame wouldn't go out for a longer period of time if there was also a plant underneath the bell jar. So the reason why the flame wouldn't go out is because the plant releases the oxygen that fire needed in order to burn. And we can tell from Priestley, basically, in our photosynthesis reaction, we now know for sure, hey, that was oxygen being produced. Ingenhouse did further experiments with oxygen. So he had aquatic plants or underwater plants, kind of like we had in the fish aquariums in class. And he found out that those plants are only bubbling, they only produce little oxygen bubbles during the daytime. So sunlight is needed in order to produce oxygen, which helped us understand that oxygen is made only during the light reactions, part of photosynthesis. Finally, we had Calvin. He traced the chemical pathway of carbon during the light independent reactions. So he basically looked at all of these tiny different reactions that are happening during the light independent reactions during the Calvin cycle. And he figured out how exactly does carbon dioxide end up looking like glucose, C6H12O6. Because of his extensive work on determining the different steps of this process, the light independent reactions were renamed to be called the Calvin cycle, named after him. So if you do something really cool in science and you kind of explore and learn something new, then it could be named after you. Kind of neat. Anyway, thank you for listening.